In this video, we're going to get a bit more personal about our own money management styles.
And we'll be sharing some great online applications with you as well.
So Ira, you have one credit card account that each you and your wife have a credit card for.
Yes, we share a credit card, and I check on the balance pretty much every day. We try to keep it simple because that way it's easy to monitor when we're spending more than I'm earning or we're earning. So I'm monitoring our income every month and our spending every month. And in fact, to make it easier on our life so we have some flexibility, I actually do it in 3-month quarters. And that gives us some flexibility because we like to travel. So some months when we travel, we're spending more money than we are the next month when we're not traveling. And it's important to maintain that flexibility at the same time that we're keeping it simple. And of course, sometimes we spend a little bit more than what our budget is. And in that situation, basically what we do is we sit down and talk. And any large expenses that we have that are coming up, we defer until the next quarter.
I see. Okay. So you know how much is coming in each month, and some of those expenses are coming out of your checking account, like the mortgage you mentioned, and some taxes. And then everything else goes onto a rewards credit card. You can use the rewards for travel, it sounds like, which is good for you and your wife's lifestyle. But all total, you have income coming in, the checking and credit card going out, and you want to make sure that income is greater than the credit card and checking account bills each month.
That's a great summary, and we like to keep it simple. And at our point in life, we're not so concerned about savings as you would be at your point in life because we've spent our whole lives saving, and now it's time to spend it. But it's important to keep a system, to maintain a system that's going to allow you to track that spending when your income goes down or when you're older and you're not earning as much money and you keep spending money.
These are great points. But you touched on it a little bit, but maybe go back to what happens when there's a problem in your household finances? What do you do then?
Well, we're fortunate in that my wife and I collaborate on this exercise, and I show her what the balances are on the credit card and how close we are to either spending less or spending more, and then we adjust our spending together. And it's a collaborative effort. It involves communication and honesty. Tell us a little bit about your system, Elizabeth.
Well, as you know, Ira, we've talked about this a few times before. Our system for my husband and I is much more complex.
Yes.
We're newlyweds, and we're also a little bit younger on our end. So
you're at a different stage of life.
Completely. We're at the asset accumulation phase of our lives. In order for us to get on track, we have a couple businesses and many different accounts. Across all those accounts, to keep them all organized, I can't just look into one credit card statement. So I use technology to help in our case. I use a program called Mintcom, though there are many others out there to choose from. And that way I have 100% of all our accounts for both myself and my husband in one Mint.com account.
So Mint allows you to combine all your accounts into one viewing online?
I'm not sure that's the official use of it, but yes, for us, it works and it's perfect.
Excellent.
Everything from retirement accounts and credit cards to savings, checkings, property, you name it.
Business and personal as well.
Business and personal as well, yeah. This way we can see everything that we own, all our assets and accounts, and then everything that we owe, any debts and so on and so forth. And we actually get a picture of what our net worth is so that we can make sure, I mean, that's the magic number we want to be increasing to get to the retirement.
Oh, so net worth is how you track your success and the fact that whatever system you have is working. What do you want to see your net worth doing?
Increase over time.
Okay.
But it didn't start that way. Initially, it was flat or worse because we found out through Mint.com and tracking our expenses, as well as looking at the categories that all the expenses went into, that we were spending more than we were earning many months, more so than the months that we weren't spending as much as we were earning.
And you're relatively newly married now, 3 years?
Yes.
And so what was that transition like, combining money?
It was a little tricky at first. I think money discussions with a spouse can be pretty heated because where do you learn about money? There's no class on it really. So what you're up against is having conversations about, lessons that are pretty deep-seated from your entire life. And that can bring up a lot of issues, but having the data in front of us made the conversations more productive. And we actually chose to go the route of, we'd have, since we wanted to spend less, we chose Mondays. We said we weren't going to eat out. We were going to eat at home those nights. And we were going to talk about money every Monday night and called it Money Monday Date Night.
No,
so that was our weekly institution.
Way too adorable.
My husband's a pretty good sport.
How long ago did you start those, and are you still having them?
Probably about 2.5 years ago. And I say we're more on the monthly time frame now. As we've tracked our expenses through Mint, we saw how much we were spending in each category. Things like, this is how much we spend on home-related products, home services. This is how much we spend on food. This is how much we spend on transportation. Knowing we had to make cuts somewhere, we would just make it a goal. All right, next month, can we get our food budget down $50 more?
Let me ask you this. When you thought about doing this and you were guesstimating how much you were spending, how close was your guess lined up with the reality when you broke your spending down into these categories?
I'm positive that our estimates and what we were guessing felt comfortable. Of course, we don't spend more than we earn, but the data indicated that we were completely wrong about that, and in various different ways. Pretty much across the board, we were overspending for what our incomes were.
So how did you react to the reality of that difference?
Initially, not so good. I mean, it's kind of a slap in the face a little bit if you feel you spend one way and then you're looking across all your accounts as a couple and you're finding as a household your spending is completely different in reality than what you thought.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shock.
A little bit.
And so 3 years ago, this was pretty intense. Where are things at now after 3 years of developing a system and putting into practice and measuring your net worth and taking all the measures that you've taken so far?
Well, it's gotten to be a lot easier, almost to the point of boredom. I mean, it's very...
You're bored.
Well, I mean,
about money.
it was such an adrenaline rush in the beginning to make those quick wins. And now it's just a lot of incremental change over time. We can pay all our bills on time in full, and we can keep on top of all of our payments on time. We are spending less than we earn each month, and we know the areas of our budget that we can continuously make more cuts if we need to add in some more kind of buffer.
So you feel you have a system that works for you as your life stage changed because you had a baby?
Yes. Yes.
And you can integrate that into your discussions about money and keep your system intact because you were consistent and persistent,
Right.
and you made sure you had some way to measure your success.
That's right.
You also broke it down into smaller pieces that were more manageable. You took the quick wins as quickly as you could, but you stuck with the longer-term goals because that's the only way you knew you'd succeed. And you did that, the way you measure that is through watching your net worth change. And that includes paying down debt, earning more money, and saving more money.
Right, and the savings component, once we were spending less than we were making, I would start automatically saving money at the beginning of the month. So that money was socked away before we had a chance to even begin to spend
It was almost like an expense item.
Exactly.
You said you're gonna pay yourself first.
Those months we were spending $50, $100 less on food, that automatically would just go to our emergency fund before we had a chance to spend it. And it'll continue every month. We'll have that money going straight to savings.
Did you ever have to go into your savings to cover expenses?
Not often, but once in a while, yeah. But as long as we keep replenishing that account, we can do that. We can pull from it, set our target, keep filling it up as we use it. Ideally, you don't want to use it, but...
So where do you go from here?
That's a good question. I know we're going to continually simplify our accounts because we want the process to continue to be simple. We want to make sure that we're saving aggressively for our goals. And even though I manage the household finances, I still have conversations with my husband so that he knows where all the accounts are, how to access them all.
What happened to Money Mondays?
We don't have them as often. I kind of miss them.
I'm sad.
I know. But it also takes, just because I manage everything it has an added responsibility for myself to make sure my husband's on board. He has to know all of these components as well, and I have to be open to his suggestions.
Because again, there's no class that anybody takes in cash flow management and spending and savings. And there are many outside influences which encourage us to spend money and even spend money that we don't have. Financial services companies are pretty savvy at encouraging us to buy and accumulate material goods without having to pay for them.
That's right, and it can be a good accountability to be able to answer to a life partner in that situation for that. So, Ira, let's wrap things up here.
Good idea.
You and I, two very different approaches to managing our household finances. With some similarities, we have our spouse on board. We know how much money's coming in. We know how much is going out and that it's less than what we're bringing in each month.
We also know our net worth.
We know our net worth, which is increasing over time, which means we're paying down debt and we're saving more each month, or prioritizing savings earlier. There are many ways to get started. I use technology. Ira uses his statements. You can also use paper and pencil, where you just write the date, the item, the amount, and a category, home, auto, food. You can also do a spreadsheet, and you can also use various different technology and apps that I've talked about, Mint.com, but there's personalcapital.com, youneedabudget.com, which is ynab.com. I guess the only downside that I've noticed is when my husband tries to buy me a gift, I sometimes see the transaction before the actual event. It's kind of tricky.
That's another similarity that we have. My wife cannot surprise me with a present. And generally, I just want to add that start with as simple a method as possible. Start with something that's not going to cause you, that's going to cause you as little anxiety as possible, and move up the scale of complexity as you need to. And be persistent and patient with yourself. Our habits are addictive, and our bad habits are even more addictive than good habits. So be prepared to revert to old spending habits unless you have these guardrails, unless you have this system, unless you have a way to hold yourself and your partner or spouse accountable.
Absolutely. Try a method, the easiest, the better, for 90 days. If that doesn't work, try another method. There's still many, many more methods to track your spending, but it is the only way to understand what your budget is.